Welcome back to Talk of the Bay. On Saturday, September 30th, the Safe Schools Project will present 2 different summits at Watsonville High School to assist and support youth, parents, and educators to help create a safe and more inclusive future for everyone under the LGBTQIA+ umbrella. The first summit is the Queer, Trans, and Allied Student Summit of the Central Coast, which will present a non-judgmental look at queer history. And the second is a free bilingual workshop for parents, guardians, adult allies, and educators who want a deeper understanding of gender and youth. In our virtual studio, I have on the line Stuart Rosenstein, director of the Queer Youth Task Force of Santa Cruz County. He is also the co-chair of the annual Queer Youth Leadership Awards. The homophobia Stuart experienced growing up in Texas offers him the opportunity to help make life better for LGBTQIA+ youth in our region. Stuart, thank you so much for joining us on Talk of the Bay. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much, Christine, and Talk of the Bay.
All right. And joining Stuart are 2 youth leaders and summit organizers. Daphne Johnson is a Santa Cruz student and a rising senior in high school, where they enjoy working in their leadership classes and clubs like the Queer Straight Alliance, as well as the Project Lit Book Club. They are passionate about history, social science, and literature, and they hope that college next year, while majoring in sociology, brings both cool new classes and mosh pits where no one stomps on their glasses again. All right, Daphne, are you there? Can you hear me, Daphne?
Yeah.
Hi. Oh, you're right there. Beautiful.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining the show. So our next youth leader and summit organizer is Sion Erkeleshun. Sion is a student in Aptos and a queer junior who has a burning passion for social justice and LGBTQIA+ rights. They enjoy playing with their cat and spending time with loved ones, as well as working for better futures in their community. Sion, are you with us?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yes, actually you did. I was very surprised. Not many people can do that.
Beautiful. Well, the Queer, Trans, and Allied Student Summit of the Central Coast is excited to be back in person for this autumn's 2023 event. Please tell us, what should our listeners know? Who would like to start, Daphne or Sion?
It's Sion, and I'll start by saying my experience with the summit. When I went to the summit last year, I was not planning it, and it was just so unapologetically queer. It was so welcoming and it was so warm. All of the volunteers were so helpful. I learned a lot from the workshops there, and I chose to join the planning committee because I wanted to recreate that warmness that I felt, and I really want to help other youth feel what I felt on that summit day.
Wonderful. And Daphne, would you like to chime in to introduce what makes this summit and working on it so compelling for you?
Yeah, I completely agree with Sion. Last year was also my first time at the summit, and I think that what makes it such a compelling and important event is that, especially coming out of the pandemic, a lot of young queer kids around our age kind of lack like the connection to the community. And I think that this summit offers a really great opportunity in person for kids to meet other queer kids. Like Sion said, it's very unapologetically queer. It gives us a really good opportunity to access all kinds of resources and workshops. And I chose to join the planning committee to help out with it this year because I felt really, really grateful that last year, which was kind of the first year I was a junior, that I was kind of like wading more into in-person queer spaces, that summit was there as a way to introduce me to a lot of the really awesome positive sides of like what it is to be queer and a teenager in Santa Cruz County. And I wanted to be able to kind of return on that experience for other kids, because I think that that's kind of the crux of what the queer community is about, is helping out our community and returning on the positive experiences that we have, especially when we're young.
No, that is well said, and it is so important to have support. And on that theme, I want to pivot to you, Stuart, because you are part of the Safe Schools project, and you had mentioned that the inspiration for you wanting to support youth and youth leaders like Daphne and Sion was your own experience in Texas. Could you speak a little bit about what excites you about this summit happening on September 30th?
Yes, thank you for asking. So when I was growing up, I didn't even know LGBT I didn't even know, I didn't connect the dots when I was young. So I had no context to what it meant to be an LGBT person or for me, myself, to be gay. I actually did not come out till I was 31. And when I came out, I was living in Los Angeles, and there was all this wealth of information that I wish I had when I was younger. And that really inspired me. And then there was an organization, there still is, an organization called the GSA Network in Oakland, and they were doing summits for students. And at the time that we brought them to Santa Cruz, we would get 20, 30 students. And it's just been such a focus when I hear back from the students like Sion and Daphne. We now had about 200 students last year. And and Noreen Winkler was a mentor to me, who was a teacher at Santa Cruz High School. And she told me, Stuart, if you're going to do anything to help kids, get them to conferences so they can learn from each other. And so that's been the driving force.
Oh, that's beautiful. Conferences where they can learn from each other. So this is the perfect time to pivot back. Daphne, Sion, what are the students offering each other at this wonderful summit?
At the summit, there will be workshops. And one of the workshops that is going to be, there's going to be so many workshops that will help the youth and have resources that closeted people or people who just came out of the closet may not have. One of them is healthy relationship and consent workshop. I feel that this workshop is especially important because when learning about relationships, it's just heteronormative relationships instead of queer relationships, and not many people know what queer relationships look like. And it's also about consent, and I feel like that's very important because I feel that our society has just put as a no means no and a yes means yes, when it's a lot more complex and convoluted than that. And I feel like it's very important for especially youth to learn about other people's boundaries and relationships within the queer community, because that's not things that people teach.
And are students putting these workshops together and teaching them themselves?
Some students are, and some are adult-led. I think that the relationships and consent one is adult-led, but I am also teaching one. It's how to create a zine, and I'm also doing it with my partner, Nico Olmsted. So a lot of them are also youth-led.
That's wonderful. Can you give maybe one more example of one of the workshops that are being held? The consent one just is incredibly compelling. I mean, I wish for myself anything like that could have been offered, and you described it very articulately. And so I'm really curious, what might be another workshop that a student, a young person might experience at this summit?
Daphne actually has a workshop that he is very passionate about. If Daphne, do you want to explain that one?
Yeah, one of the workshops that I'm really excited about attending this year is the Your Voice Matters, the Importance of LGBTQIA Students in Leadership Roles workshop. I'm the ASB president at my high school, which is something that I'm incredibly proud of, because when I started my freshman year in high school, I really didn't think that it was something that I was going to be able to realistically achieve, especially not as a queer teenager, because while the homophobia that I deal with in school is absolutely nowhere near what Stuart was dealing with decades ago in Texas, it's definitely still a boundary and a barrier, and it makes a lot of queer kids feel like our voices don't really have a place in conversations about leadership, or like if they do have a place, that place is secondary to the voices of straight students who are, much more numerically prevalent in a lot of schools. And I think that workshops like this Your Voice Matters one are a really great way for queer kids to have it reaffirmed that like what we're saying matters and we can be leaders. Because I think that a lot of young queer kids do want to be leaders. We have a lot that we want to say, and there are a lot of things that we want to touch on in a world that can be pretty hostile to us. And I think that the summit and workshops like this one, like the consent one that Sion does, what they do is they give queer youth the tools to move forward. This Your Voice Matters workshop, I think, is a fantastic opportunity for queer kids to learn how to lead, and also to harness that that instinct that they might have towards leadership, even when they don't necessarily think that the world is quite ready for that.
It just sounds like a beautiful opportunity to feel oneself come forward. And that looks like, from what I read about this summit, empowerment and liberation is a very important theme that you all are seeking to offer. So can you speak to what else young people might experience if they come to this summit? I think you have a resource fair going.
Yeah, we have a resource fair that includes a lot of local resources from all across Santa Cruz County. We have the Diversity of Center of Santa Cruz coming. We have Barrios Unidos, which works with immigrants and local families of Santa Cruz County coming. We have Santa Cruz Public Library. We have resources from other parts of the county as well, not just Santa Cruz City. We have the Ventana Wilderness Alliance for students who are inclined to work with animals. We have the Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History. We have a lot of resources from tutoring opportunities like Birds of a Feather Tutoring and Digital Nest. We have Santa Cruz Pride attending the resource fair. It's a really great opportunity for kids to get access to materials that they might not always have access to. I know Stina mentioned earlier that a lot of our workshops are fantastic for closeted students or students who might not be out yet. That's one of my favorite parts about the resource fair, is that a lot of times you're able to take home these really discrete resources. Even stuff that's just as simple as like getting you a line to a number that you can call when you feel like you need to talk to somebody about stuff that you can't talk to your family about. We have GSA Network coming. They'll give you resources on how to start a GSA or Gay Straight Alliance at your school, which can connect you to other students, and many more opportunities at the resource fair. And then on top of the resource fair for students, there are also caucuses, which I know Sion wanted to talk a little about.
Yes, thank you, Daphne. Also, that was beautifully said about the resource fair. I could have said it better myself.
Truly.
Caucuses, we're going to have caucuses there, and it's where a group of people with a shared identity will discuss what their identity means to them. I will be leading a non-binary caucus, and in that caucus, binary identity means to all of us. And it's going to be focused on individual journeys within the gender binary, and also how society pushes this non-binary identity onto us. Because in a sense that when you come out as non-binary, that's really all people see. And I really want to focus on I want to lead the youth that I'm going to talk to also find out that being non-binary is not the only part of being trans. It can be the way you express yourself, and it can be the way you just live your life. And I think that these caucuses are going to be very important, because there's going to be different caucuses, such as neurodivergent caucuses and bisexual caucuses. It's very important to build community, and I think that's probably what I'm most excited about for this summit, because community building is definitely one of the main goals of this summit, and caucuses is just an excellent way to achieve that goal.
Beautifully expressed, and that sounds incredibly compelling and, again, empowering. And so if people listening right now, young people, allies, parents, want to pass the word along or know how to register, where can they find you?
So going to the Safe Schools Project website, and if I could share what that is, it's safe with an S, schools plural with an S, project, safeschoolsproject.org/summit, and there will be a registration form. We are asking all students to pre-register so we can have enough food. We're going to have De La Comena, who provides food for us several years now. They have delicious food. We're going to have free breakfast and free lunch. And we also have T-shirts. A student from Santa Cruz designed our summit T-shirt, and the first 150 students to register get a free T-shirt. We also have goodie bags. And is it okay to give a shout out to a community organization that's helping us?
Of course.
Is that okay?
Of course.
So Bay Federal, for now the 4th or 5th year in a row, not only volunteers the morning of, but they're assembling 200 goodie bags for students.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And we've gotten things from all kinds of organizations. And so pre-registration is really important to make sure we have enough food, enough goodies. It's from 9:30 to 2 p.m. It's going to be at Watsonville High School. And I just want to add one last thing, how grateful we are to the school districts. We have 5 or 6 school buses coming Santa Cruz City Schools, Soquel Union Elementary, SLV Unified, Scotts Valley Unified, and I know I'm missing one other one. And then from this, the summit is for students from 3 counties, Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, and San Benito County. So we have a bus coming from Carmel, a bus coming from Salinas Unified, and we also have a bus coming from Monterey Unified. And the importance of this is bringing youth from the region together. And I did want to mention 1 or 2 more workshops. We also have some painting art workshops. We're going to have pumpkins, and we're going to have a pumpkin painting. So we're going to have a lot of fun, too. It will be a joyous experience. Adam Spickler is going to be our keynote speaker at the Mello Center for the welcome event, and it's just going to be what we think is going to be a really exciting. And I should say that the students, Daphne and Sion, and the entire planning committee selected their keynote speaker. They've actually decided on the theme and all the good stuff. So it should be very inspiring.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stuart, for all that vital information. And if you're driving in your car and you can't remember it all, you can also find all of that in our show notes at ksqd.org. It's all right there in the front page, the show with show notes. And so, Stuart, we're now going to pivot. So before we do, there is a second summit happening. And so before we get to that, I want to thank Daphne and Sion for joining us on Talk of the Bay, for describing your work and your leadership so fabulously. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having
us.
All right. And so I want to talk, Stuart, about this second workshop that's being offered. Understandings of gender are changing rapidly, and it can be so challenging to keep up. So you have the second workshop that's offered simultaneously on September 30th. It's bilingual, and it's for parents, guardians, adult allies, and educators who want a deeper understanding of gender and youth. And to help tell us all about it is our next guest, Andrea Damon. Andrea is a teacher with trans families of Santa Cruz County. She facilitates support group meetings and provides individual peer counseling to parents. Andrea also volunteers with Gender Spectrum, co-facilitating their national parent support group meetings. This is Andrea's 3rd year as part of the Understanding Gender Workshop Organizing Committee. Andrea, thanks for joining us on Talk of the Bay.
Thank you so much for having me.
So could you introduce this workshop to our listeners? Tell us a little bit about what it is and why it's so important.
Absolutely. So this workshop is to complement the incredible work happening with the Queer and Trans and Allied Youth Summit. But we're coming at the goal of creating a better, safer world for LGBTQ plus youth through educating the adults. And at Trans Families, where I do groups, we know that one of the most important things that we can do for trans, non-binary, and gender-expansive youth is to educate and support their parents. The parents have the greatest impact on youth mental health of all the factors, including schools, peers, the political environment. So by working with the adults who are interacting with youth, particularly parents, but also guardians, educators, and allies, we believe we can help make the world a safer and better place for young people. And that's really our mission, is for young people to thrive. And so this workshop, we're very excited about it this year. We've expanded our offerings a little bit, and I'd love to tell you a little bit about the different parts, the different workshops we're offering.
That would be perfect. Please do.
So in the morning, we're actually offering 3 workshops simultaneously, and they are all about understanding gender. We have Ashlyn Adams coming, who is the lead trainer for EDI educators, and Ashlyn's going to be doing a Gender 101 for us. So this is for people who really want to learn the basics, to understand terms that you might hear like non-binary or cisgender, and to understand about different pronouns people might use. So this gives you a real good foundation of language and concepts around gender. And Ashlyn did this workshop for us last year, and it was fantastic. So we're super excited she's coming back. And then at the same time, we are really thrilled to have Zach Keith, who is the Diversity Center's Youth Programs Coordinator and also a doctoral student up at UCSC. And Zach is an amazing person and is going to be doing what we're calling Gender 201. So this is for people who know the basics already. They know what this terminology means. They maybe feel comfortable using non-binary pronouns, but they'd like to understand a little more deeply about gender, more history, philosophy. There's a lot more to it than just pronouns and language. And so we're super excited to have them. And then at the same time, at the third slot, we have Rosaline Macias, who is an activist and advocate and facilitates the Diversity Center Spanish language peer support group. And she's going to be presenting in Spanish, her first language, about gender, understanding gender, and also gender within the Latina community. So those three will be happening at the same time. And I hope that there'll be something for everyone who comes. And then later in the day, we will be having an educators panel. We have administrators and teachers, including our own County Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Farah Saba. They'll be talking about making schools affirming and safe, and also we'll be talking in that panel about students' rights within the school system and how parents can support, protect, and advocate for their children. And then our last panel of the day, which is a new one for us, we haven't offered before, will be a panel of mental health professionals. These are going to be 4 incredible therapists who work in Santa Cruz County and all specialize in working with young people who are exploring their gender identity. And they will be sharing with us how parents can best support their youth's mental health, and ways to get support for youth who need it, and also to talk a little bit about why we're seeing this upsurge in mental health struggles in our trans, non-binary, and gender-expansive youth community. This is something a lot of parents have questions about, and it's really important that we talk about it together. So those are our panels for Saturday, and we will have simultaneous Spanish interpretation for the ones that are in English. So we're hoping that we have made it accessible for all families who can use this information.
Oh, my goodness, this sounds so compelling. I'm sure people listening are sensing the rich program that has been put together and prepared. And I thank you all for offering this resource to our community. And in case you've just tuned in, you're listening to KSQD Santa Cruz and in Monterey. And we're talking about summits that are being held at Watsonville High School on September 30th. And that was Andrea Damon talking about a special education and support workshop for parents and allies and educators. And it just sounds incredibly rich. And Stuart, this is also sponsored by the Safe Schools Project, correct?
Yes, and the Safe Schools Project is a program of the Queer Youth Task Force, which was founded in 1997. And I wanted to add that the reason why the Safe Schools Project is sponsoring this work is that though Santa Cruz County and our region does really excellent work in making sure that students are honored and celebrated, to make sure they have a safe place, we still hear incidents of students being misgendered. We still hear that LGBT curriculum is not being taught in the schools. And these are all in California state laws that protect LGBT students. And so what I've learned from Noreen Winkler and from a lot of my mentors is that our job is to empower students with the laws that protect them to make sure that they are actually being enforced and utilized on each campus. And what I've learned in working with trans families is that it shouldn't just be on the burden of students to be advocating. It should be educators and parents learning about how they can be better informed. And so the combo of these two events on one day, the dream scenario is that the whole family comes, the families drop off their kids to the student summit, and then the parents and educators and guardians go to the adult workshop. So that's the dream scenario.
Oh, it just sounds Wonderful. And I love that vision. And it's just very clear that an incredible amount of thoughtfulness and preparation has gone into both of these events. Could you share a little bit about that? Like what goes into putting these on?
Well, I'll jump in on the overall picture, but Andrea can tell you the details about the Understanding Gender workshop. But I will tell you that I really want to give a shout-out to Ferris Sabah, who's the county superintendent for the County Office of Education. And Ferris has just been such a huge support of making sure that youth are empowered with knowledge and information. And so, I went to Ferris about 4 or 5 years ago and said, we're getting 20, 30 students at our summits. How do we get this bigger? And Ferris just offered such wealth of information of how to inspire students and how to make sure that students' voices are in the lead of this. And so, and PVUSD, now this is also many years that PVUSD has been a sponsor of the summit, providing safe space, having the classrooms, having the Mellow Center, having the cafeteria, and the entire team, tech support and security and just making sure everyone is safe. That's some of the mechanisms that go into it. But our heart and soul is really around the students. And I want to give a shout out to Brian Hanaway, who is a just recent graduate of UCSC, who was a young person himself just recently, and still is actually in their 20s, and working with the students to make sure that the theme is in tune to what students are going through now. I love that Daphne and Sion talked about how coming out of COVID and the shutdowns, that queer youth are hungry for community and to know each other, more than the 5 or 10 people that you may know in your circle, to know hundreds of queer youth from San Benito County and Monterey County. So it's working with them to make sure that they approve everything with the theme and the ideas and the call for workshops and T-shirt designs. So it's a lot of hours, and then it all happens, and in 5 hours it's done. The legs of this, and I love that Sion and Daphne mentioned closeted students, and so we're helping to reach the students who either don't have a safe place at home or are struggling themselves to meet other queer youth. Andrea, I'd love to know a little bit about the ins and outs of the planning for the Understanding Gender.
Yes, please, Andrea. We have about a minute and a half left, and I would definitely like to hear about that.
I will be brief. We are a small group of very passionate and committed volunteers. I've been working with Michelle Brandt and Jen Salinas Holtz for the last few years on this. They worked on it before I joined as well, so they've been dedicated for some time. And because we work with parents, all throughout the year, we are taking in their needs and what they need to support their children. And so we just have been trying to create events that will meet that need so that the parents and guardians and educators all have the information that they need to meet the youth where they are. But it is just a volunteer organized event, and we're always happy to have more volunteers join us.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with our community these two very valuable and resourcing events that are going to be happening September 30th at the Watsonville High School. Stuart, please tell folks where they can find this information one more time as we wrap things up.
Yes, in addition to your webpage, they can go to safeschoolsproject.org. They'll see the information about the summits, and they can register either for the adult summit, Understanding Gender. There's also a link in Spanish. And then for the middle school and high school students, they'll see the link for registration for students. We're asking everyone to sign up and register, ideally by early next week. And we are also looking for volunteers, and we have a link for volunteers on our webpage as well. Thank you so much, Christine, and thank you, Talk of the Bay. We're very grateful for this opportunity and to be a community partner just helping the overall community at large. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, community is what it's all about. And so thank you, Stuart Rosenstein. And thank you, Andrea Damon, for coming on and sharing about this second summit. And I hope folks will register and take advantage of this incredible resource that all of you and these wonderful student leaders have put together. Thanks again.
Thank you so
you.
much.